I think it's really easy to, as a kid, to not quite understand what engineering is and all of the cool things that are wrapped up in engineering. It's really easy to struggle with math and say, oh, well, I can't do that because, you know, I'm not good at math. I'm not good at science. And I think, you know, towards what your book is trying to do and that kind of stuff, it's really about how can we get students introduced to STEM in a way that's fun, in a way that you're not just struggling with something.
Welcome to the Why STEM podcast, brought to you by STEM Vice 360, where we ignite curiosity, break barriers, and empower the next generation of STEM leaders. I'm your host, Dr. Rameesh Madourie, an educator, a professional, and advocate for making STEM education accessible, inspiring, and transformative. Whether you're a student, an educator, a professional, or just someone who is passionate about STEM education, this podcast is for you. My guest today has followed a fascinating path, from mechanical engineering to software engineering leadership, and along the way has developed a solid passion for making STEM education in K-12 accessible. From leading strong teams to solving tough problems, he continues to challenge what engineering should look like. If you've ever wondered about career pivots, lifelong learning, or if you can break barriers in STEM, this conversation is for you. So with that, I'm thrilled to welcome to the Why STEM podcast, Zach Neihman. Zach, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here with you.
Appreciate you. So again, it's such a pleasure to have you here and for you to be willing to have this conversation, because I believe some of the work we've done together, the passion you have and your inspiration, I think, can definitely be an inspiration to others. So with that, let's just dive right in. You originally trained as a mechanical engineer. What first drew you to engineering?
Yeah, of course. I think I had a grandfather growing up who was an electrical engineer, and so that was always present in my life, and he was super into amateur radio. Okay. And I was always fascinated, like, what are you doing with all of this equipment, and what are the things going on here? And so I think growing up, I had a lot of influence into that direction. And then going through school, it was something that was always kind of there, but interestingly, I always excelled in reading and writing, like in high school. And I wasn't actually that great. I mean, I was okay, but I wasn't actually that great at science and math. But it all goes back to educators like yourself and folks that can really inspire and challenge people to go that direction. So, quick story. In junior year of high school, I wanted to actually drop my precalculus class. I was really struggling with it. I was like, I don't know if I should be doing this. Like, I'm really struggling. I'm not learning these concepts. And the teacher I had at the time, he was Coach Johnson. He was also the football coach. He was the precalculus teacher as well. And he said no. Like, I asked if I could drop his course, and he was like, no. And the reason he said no is I think you can study hard. I think you can get through this. Okay. And so I think back to that moment all the time of you know, if he hadn't challenged me and just had let me drop his class, which he could have done, I might not be where I am today. And so that was kind of the catalyst to make me start thinking more seriously about STEM. I studied hard, I got through that class, and then that kind of built some confidence to say, okay, even though I'm good at reading and writing, it's something that I can kind of push towards and figure out how to do. So
that's sort of fascinating, because generally what we hear is the engineer is good at math, but not good at the reading and writing. But you're saying it's flipped for you.
Yes.
You were good at reading and writing, but math was the challenge. So how do you think that this coach saw this in you? What did you do where he saw sort of this passion or this drive in you?
I'm not quite sure. I think that it goes to maybe his just talent as being both a coach and a teacher. I think that, you know, he definitely wore both of those hats when he was working with me. Okay. And I think it's just incredibly important that educators like yourself play both of those roles.
Okay.
And it was very helpful for me.
Okay. So just to take it back just a bit, you spoke about a grandfather who sort of was the inspiration, and then a coach who saw something in you that you didn't see.
Yeah.
Is there another teacher that you felt as you progressed or passed where this coach was that really reinforced what was shared with you earlier?
Yeah, 100%. So that was my junior year of high school. In my senior year of high school, I had an incredible calculus teacher. I had an incredible computer science teacher. And you just, like in our computer science class, I think what's really important is it's really easy to look at STEM and see challenging coursework, or see math and see science and see those challenging things. And what I appreciate about my coursework in high school was getting exposure to the fun side. Like, what actual problems are we trying to solve? And in computer science class, we're building computer games and we're learning about how all of that comes together. And you start to see the application of it more than the actual science and math. And it becomes much easier to see yourself, okay, I think that, I want to start and keep solving these problems and, be immersed in this. So I think that's really important.
So there goes your passion for the computer side and the coding.
Yes.
Because when we were working together, that's one of the projects that you had mentioned with the
Raspberry Pi.
Raspberry Pis.
Yeah.
So that was essentially, again, based on your experience, you saw the application of these things in your high school years.
Yep.
So you felt that it would have sort of made a difference because it made a difference in your life.
Yes.
All right. So now you've had these experiences, a grandfather to support you and math teachers along the way that really gave you that confidence to be able to progress and know that you could work hard. Was there a particular moment growing up in school, or even let's talk about like your college life. Was there a moment that you said, you know what, I've had enough support along the way, I've developed my own self-efficacy, no, I can really do this?
I think a common experience, so I went to Colorado School of Mines for mechanical engineering originally, and I think a pretty common experience that people will go through is you'll take your first exam and you'll get a D. And that'll be, I've never gotten a D before. How do I bounce back from that? And I think there's a lot of different ways to approach that situation, but what helped me a lot was I said, this is a learning point that I need to either challenge myself to keep going or, go a different path. And so I think learning how to learn and taking that D and making it so that my next exam wasn't the same, and I saw improvement and improvement and improvement, was incredible. And so that, I think that what I'm trying to say is it's a journey of success and it's a journey of failures as well. And how you can kind of read in and bounce back from those failures is what's important. And I think the continual bounce back is what made me feel like, okay, this is something I can do. Like, I can take this feedback, I can make changes, I can start to learn, and I can start to grow and do better. Okay.
So that was your first degree?
Yes.
But did you go back for a master's?
I did go back for a master's, yes.
What's your master's in?
Computer science.
From the School of Mines as well?
Yep.
So, got a D, learned that, listen, failure is not failure until you've accepted it. Now you've developed this sort of capacity where it doesn't matter what it is, you're going to work through it.
Yep.
Went back for a master's in computer science. But the first degree was in mechanical.
Yep.
Why the switch?
So I graduated with my degree in mechanical engineering, and I was working as a project engineer. I was working with robotic welding. And so I was building robotic welding systems and integrating them at customer sites, which was awesome. And that was a lot of fun. But I got more and more exposed to the software side. And it's funny, I actually, I mentioned earlier that computer science course I took in high school. I actually went into Colorado School of Mines declared as a computer scientist. And then I made the switch to mechanical engineering.
Okay.
And so I was working as a mechanical engineer. I got more exposed to software. I said, hey, this is something that's really cool. I actually knew it was really cool when I went into school. And then I said, this is something that I want to do more seriously. And so that's what kind of prompted going back and getting the computer science degree.
Okay. So I have a bias towards mechanical.
Yep.
And now you have a bias towards software. What is the thing that you believe sets software engineers apart versus a mechanical or even an electrical engineer?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think that if you're spending a lot of time looking at code and that doesn't scare you, that's probably what might separate you. But I think that there's so much overlap. I think that there's much more overlap than there is difference in computer science and mechanical engineering and electrical engineering. I think at the end of the day, we all just love to solve problems. And maybe the thinking and how you approach solving the problem is a little bit different. And if you look at code for a long time and that doesn't make you want to rip your hair out, then you probably have more affinity to computer science and programming.
Okay. So you've talked about sort of some of the transferable skills from mechanical over to computer science. It's about problem solving. What kinds of problems exist most in your software engineering job?
A lot of the things that are challenging is, I'm sure, what you'd have in any discipline of engineering. I kind of like to think that all problems are sort of the same problem, more or less.
Okay.
It's about how do you take all of the different teams and all of the different things that they're working on and bring them together to be a unified force towards solving a larger problem, and knowing how different things fit in and all of that. And I know that sounds like a not super technical problem. It's more of a how do you make sure that things are pointed in the right direction problem. But I think that that's probably true for most problems.
Okay. More of like a leadership.
Exactly.
Which is a segue into my next question. How did you develop leadership skills in an industry that can often be focused purely on technical performance?
I think that I would like to think that I'm a decent communicator. And I think maybe that goes back to, actually being good at writing and good at reading back in high school and continuing that. And so I think that those skills have a lot of impact towards being able to lead and drive and, keep folks pointed at the right thing. And collaboration really is very important.
Okay. So a big part of leadership is about having a vision, as you say, keeping them going in the right direction. It's like knowing where you want to go with the team, but also being able to support the team in getting there, because not everyone on the team will know exactly what it is you want them to do or be able to execute at your standard, right? Your standard. How do you ensure that as you share the vision, how do you ensure that there's a level of accountability without anyone feeling less than as a part of the team that you lead?
Yeah, of course. I think that people appreciate being challenged. And I think people appreciate being in a position where they can have a lot of impact. And so if you can help people to understand, like, not only the vision, but their role, and I don't want to understate that role that somebody can have in pushing towards that impact. And I think that once people can kind of see the impact of what they're doing and what they're pushing towards, and making it really clear that somebody's responsible or accountable for a specific thing, people will step up to the plate, in my experience.
And you've seen that over the years in your career?
100%, yeah.
Okay. So with AI and emerging tech shaping software every day,
Yep.
what trends or tools are you most excited about?
So many. There's a lot of really interesting things happening with the AI space right now. I personally have just started playing around with like GitHub Copilot, and in particular the agent mode of GitHub Copilot, where you kind of give it some agency to be able to make changes and build different parts of your software. And that's been pretty incredible. Like it's compelling at a point where it's very compelling to use it and integrate it into your workflow.
So that definitely might seem real good because increased efficiency. But isn't there some sort of like a fear around this, that this device might ultimately make the human obsolete in this regard?
I think that there is definitely a fear of that. I'm particularly not super worried that that's going to happen. I think that you can look at software engineering and you can say, oh, well, these people just write code. And I think AI is excellent at writing code, but there's actually so much more that goes into being a software engineer and coordinating across teams and making sure that you're building the right thing. And then one thing I've noticed about Copilot in agent mode is that you have to keep an eye on what it's doing, because it could try to push you in a direction that you don't actually want to go, or the architecture isn't going to be sustainable, or it's got XYZ problem, or it's not leveraging a certain library the way you'd like to, or doesn't adhere to certain standards, etc. And so it does require somebody that has knowledge of the space to kind of keep an eye on it and make sure that it's doing the right thing. And so I think that for those two reasons, like the architectural decision-making piece, and secondly, the fact that there's so much more that goes into what a software engineer and really an engineer in any industry does than just the purely technical piece, I'm not super worried that it's going to replace a human. I think that there will always need to be a human in the loop working in tandem with AI to make something happen.
Okay. So one of the things that I am seeing in education now is that our students are just plugging the thing into ChatGPT, and they're not even editing it when it comes out. They're just copying exactly what has been given to ChatGPT and turning that in as a representation of their work. Based on what you just shared, how do you think we mitigate that? How do we sort of push our students in a way where they understand that this device, it's a tool, and the tool is only as effective as the person manipulating this thing?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I've been thinking about this all the time of, are we going to see students, there was a time in my career as a student where, we learned cursive and we had to submit papers that were all handwritten, et cetera. And I wonder if we're going to start moving back towards that, where you're in a room and you don't have access to AI and, you're actually writing something. I think that could be interesting, but it is interesting to think about. It is if you use it in the right way and you make sure that it's something that's in tandem and that you're not just relying on that 100%. I think, we've had computer-aided tools for engineering for a long time. And a rule that you should adopt if you're working with like a finite element analysis or structural engineering software is never ask a computer to do something that you can't verify. And so if we can ingrain that sort of mindset to interacting with these tools, the same goes for AI coding tools as well. Like, you don't want to actually ship any code that you're not understanding and that you are not also willing to be supportive of. I don't think we'll get to the point, like, I try to think about this, like, if this is code that I'm going to need to be on call maybe to support, and it's 3 a.m. and it's a high stress situation that I've been, woken up in the middle of the night to help figure out. I don't want to have to be trying to sift through, what did the AI do in order to make this? And so, you want to have an understanding of what it's doing in the same way that if you're solving a finite element problem, how can you verify that the output that you're getting makes sense and reason about it and rationalize it?
Okay. So if I could put that in the K through 12 way, what Zach's really saying is never take something from an AI that the information being presented you can't verify and you do not have a solid understanding or a grasp of.
Yes.
Because ultimately, you taking something from AI, it's not yours until you truly understand it and you have turned it into your own. So if pushed on it, you're able to defend or even support in the regard based on the information that it has given to you. So you're saying it's morely a support. It's more a support than a replacement to that of the human element.
Yes, I always see it as in tandem of like, this is a tool. This is another tool in the toolbox that you've got in order to be productive, make solid choices, etc.
Okay. All right. So now, you've gone through the K through 12 space and you've had phenomenal math teachers to support along the way. You've had a grandfather to show you that these things are possible. You've had some of those failure experiences early to say, hey, all right, cool. Failure is not a determining factor. I learned something from this and move forward. Have you faced, and I'm sure you have, but have you faced barriers in your career, whether from transitioning between disciplines or stepping into leadership? What are some of those barriers that you faced thus far?
Sure. I think that a barrier that was present when I wanted to switch from being a mechanical engineer to a software engineer was, how do I break into this space? I've got a non-traditional background. I've got mechanical engineering coursework, and sure, I did some programming along the way, but how am I going to prove that this is something that I can do and I've got experience there? And so that was a barrier to reason about. And I found ways to try to build more experience such that I could demonstrate, like, hey, this is something that I've done and I'm interested in. I took some online courses at Regis University, and then that was the building blocks that I ultimately transferred into mines in the computer science program. So that was definitely a barrier that I was worried about and was able to overcome through, some online classes and kind of repositioning myself a little bit.
Okay. But that took planning, though. Like, you recognized what these barriers were, and then you put things in place, like taking courses to mitigate this being an impediment to you ultimately being successful. How important is it for the next generation of STEM leaders to adopt a mindset of being strategic and being able to plan and even being able to evaluate who they are and their strengths so they're able to ultimately achieve the goals that they have for themselves?
It's incredibly important. And I think that your podcast in particular, Why STEM, it all goes back to why. And I think that if you have a strong why for why you're approaching anything, then you will be persistent and you will be resilient in trying to break down whatever barriers stand in the way of what you're trying to do.
Okay.
And so I think it's introspection and figuring out the why.
The why. Just like the podcast, Why STEM.
Yes.
Zach says you have to figure out your why in the situation, because your why is the fuel that will allow you to ensure that whatever impediment, whatever thing that is in front of you that might try to stop you, you'll overcome, because your why is then greater than the barrier that might be in front of you. Okay. The tech industry often glorifies perfect career paths. How did you embrace your own nonlinear journey?
It's a really good question. I think nonlinear paths are a strength, because with a nonlinear path...
Say that again.
Nonlinear paths are a strength, because you've got different experiences, you've got different knowledge that you're bringing from one area that is absolutely important to another area. When I was interviewing for careers as a software engineer, I said, I think that as a mechanical engineer, I bring a unique perspective. I think that having experience as a project engineer before this, I think I can bring a unique perspective to software engineering. I hope that was helpful towards me actually getting a job. But I think that that's true in whatever career change you're going to make. Anytime you have a nonlinear path, you're bringing so much wealth of knowledge that can be applied from one area to the next.
But we want to be perfect. Like, I want to walk this straight path. I want to go over there and do this with no impediment.
Yeah.
But then you say a nonlinear path is a strength. What point did you come to that realization that my struggles, my ups, my downs, my flops were all leading towards my greater good?
I don't know that there's one moment in particular, but I think that anytime you're going to do something challenging, you're going to have times where it feels good and it's easy and everything's flowing well. And then you're going to have times where it's very challenging and it's hard and something's kind of beating you down, and you're going to have to overcome that.
Okay.
And I think it all goes back to storytelling.
Okay.
And if you can put yourself in an opportunity to tell your particular story and how your nonlinear path has set you up for even more success and the wealth of knowledge that you're bringing from one area to the next, I think that that's incredible.
Okay. So as we talk about the idea of nonlinear, I just realized that Zach's also a poet. That I don't see poetry being connected to engineering. How did that come about?
100%. So I've always liked writing. I've always liked reading. And going back to educators, I got exposed to a wonderful poetry educator at Colorado School of Mines.
Okay.
And
as part of the engineering?
As part of the engineering. And so there are a handful of courses that you take at Mines that are related to reading and writing.
Okay.
And the department there is actually wonderful for those classes. And I always loved those. And so, I started writing some poetry as part of that class. And that was a really enriching experience. I think that, I noticed you set a book out back here, STEAM. And having that A in there is very important as well. It's not just technology and coursework and math and science. And I think it's really easy to look at STEM and only see that. But all of it is very important, including the arts.
So it's funny you point to the book. The idea behind the STEAM adventure is that we wanted to create something that our K through 12 students, especially those between elementary and middle school, could dive into the idea of STEAM education in a fun way. So if you actually look into the book, say a child is interested in mechanical engineering, it'll show you what mechanical engineers do, right? It'll show you some of the tools they use. It'll show you some of the places they work. So a child having gone through the experience of coloring this thing, they leave with some basic information about this particular pathway in engineering. And it's not that you're trying to teach them something at the same time, is that they're having fun. And the fun now becomes the vehicle to learn the concept that they're coloring in the book, ranging from mechanical to just a range of engineers. So if you're looking for something that's really going to engage your child around coloring and just having some fun while learning about STEM education, I think definitely the STEAM adventure is for you. So let's dive right back in. As someone passionate about expanding engineering education, and I say expanding engineering education because you have been just someone who's always willing to come in and partner with the students. Where do you see the biggest gap today in making STEM more accessible for our students?
I think it's really easy to, as a kid, to not quite understand what engineering is and all of the cool things that are wrapped up in engineering. It's really easy to struggle with math and say, oh, well, I can't do that because, I'm not good at math. I'm not good at science. And I think, towards what your book is trying to do and that kind of stuff, it's really about how can we get students introduced to STEM in a way that's fun, in a way that you're not just struggling with something. I think that, if we look at it from the programming perspective, there's like languages like Alice and languages like Scratch that attempt to make your first experience with programming something that's not frustrating, something where you're not missing semicolons and seeing a bunch of errors and that kind of thing. Because that's usually people's first experience with programming. And so if you can do the same thing with engineering, if you can get kids doing something that's fun related to engineering, whether that's Raspberry Pis. I know we've done a project with the balloon cars too, with the elementary school kids. That's going to be something that's going to be more impactful than struggling with math. And math is a tool in the toolbox, but it's really about what is the fun part and how can I get students exposed to the fun parts and get them thinking about, I really had fun doing this. I think I want to be an engineer. So,
from the K through 12 standpoint, the science, technology, engineer, art, and math, that's the vehicle that we use to solve the problem.
Yes.
The problem is what we should be talking about more. Because then when I share a problem with you, it becomes relevant. Like you could see the need to solve the situation. But then when I say to you, okay, here's the problem, but we're going to use these vehicles. We're going to use the science, the technology, the engineering, the math, the arts in order to solve the problem, then the process is what's important and not necessarily the content. As you say, math is a tool. And I think the tool math is what generally students see as, I don't like this tool. This tool is hard.
This tool is hard, yes.
This tool is hard, right? But if you understand the process and the reason for using this tool, then ultimately what you're focused on is the process to go through and not necessarily that I have to use this tool, because there's multiple tools that you can use. Math is just simply one of them. All right. So what does inclusion look like to you? Not just in hiring, but in how teams work and innovate together.
Yeah. Inclusion is exactly what it says on the tin of how do you make sure that everybody is involved and that everybody is heard as you're thinking about something. And I think people can show up to the table in different ways. And so if you're in a leadership position or if you're in a facilitator position, how do you make sure that you're gathering information from everybody at the table? And, you know, some people feel really comfortable speaking up in meetings. Some people feel really comfortable speaking up one-on-one. And so you kind of have to figure out how people like to be heard and then try to figure out how you can best listen to them and then piece together all of that information. Okay. And so I think inclusion's incredibly important so that you're getting a wide variety of opinions and strengths as you're approaching a problem. Okay.
So a big part of it, or tied to that idea of inclusion, is the idea of mentorship. And a lot of times, even in the K through 12 space, right, it's not formalized that Zach's a mentor, but you are absolutely a mentor to the kids that you were working with in the class. And the elementary school that we went to for an extended period of time, you're absolutely a mentor to them. So here's a question. Why is expanding access to engineering education so important to you? Because you took time out of your work day, as you work for work day, right, to come and support. Why is it so important to you?
We've got, you know, huge problems to solve.
Okay.
And we need all of the possible people involved in solving those problems, bringing their background, bringing their knowledge, and anything we can do. I think it's important, anything we can do to build more exposure, build more inclusion, get more people interested in all of the different fields in STEM is incredibly, incredibly important. Okay.
So now you're not just looking at the idea of having some fun, but I think that's a leadership hat right there, where you're saying, in order for us to continue the work that we've started, we have to ensure that the next generation is inspired and engaged. So by the time they get to our level, they're able to take up this mantle and move to the next level. That's a leadership move, right? That's one of those leadership moves that does not come naturally to the average person. Because in so many regards, you're thinking about me, what can I do? But you're saying, I am here now, but this work is bigger than me.
Yeah, it's all about the people. And the seeds that you're going to plant in the classroom at the elementary, the middle school, the high school level are the most important seeds that you're going to plant for that next generation and getting people interested and how do we move towards this next spot. I liked what you said about mentorship in particular, because I think community is so important whenever you're going through challenges, when you're thinking about career moves, when you're in a challenging coursework and you're pursuing STEM, or when you've got a tough problem to solve at work. Who can you bring in that's been through it before? And then once you've been through it yourself, how can you spend your time mentoring others and helping move them to the same spot of success that you've seen? Or, you know, if you're at School of Mines and you get a D on your first test, you know, how can you talk to somebody that says, hey, this is normal? Like, it doesn't mean that you don't belong here, that you got a D on this exam, because you're going to figure out what you need to learn. And the next one you take, you know, you're going to put in the work. The next one you take is going to be better. I think we've all got, you know, something in the back of our head whenever you fail that says, you don't belong here, or this isn't where you should be. And mentorship is a very strong way to help quell that piece in your brain that's going to say that.
Okay.
And so it's all about people. It's all about mentorship. It's all about community and how do we move towards, you know, successful outcomes. So besides the kids that you have mentored through our work, and if I could put a number on it, a bunch of my two of my classes, then kids at two different schools,
You've mentored through our partnership almost 150 kids
Wow.
across all the classes when I look at the numbers, right? What are some of the common hurdles through our work or other mentorship that you've done that you've seen or faced while attempting to mentor a student or even an engineer?
Sure. I think that, when we look at the things that we're doing in the classroom, it can be challenging to piece together the right funding and all of the things that we want to do that are, I think, particularly cool in the classroom requires some sort of materials and that kind of thing. And it can be hard to piece together those parts. It's also really hard. It can be really hard to ask for help. If there's somebody that's struggling with something at work or at school, it can be challenging for them to want to reach out to somebody, and that can limit the opportunity for mentorship. And maybe they're listening to that part in their head that says, hey, maybe I don't belong here. And so it can be hard to know if somebody's in that situation. I think that is something that I did learn at School of Mines is how to ask for help. And I think that if I could impart, one thing into people as they go on a journey of career switching or of going to school, it would be learn how to ask for help and know that you're going to need to, and that it's okay to do that. It's okay to go to office hours. It's okay to ask somebody at work, like, hey, how are you dealing with this challenge? Those types of things.
Okay. And I'll add to that. Asking for help is one of my superpowers. I have no problem to ask for help. Me not knowing is not an indictment on who I am. I think it's an opportunity to learn. And asking for help is how we connected. And look at the magnitude of work that we did just by me coming and saying, hey, I know your company, you guys have a solid amount of knowledge when it comes onto this. How can we partner?
Yeah.
Me asking for help has afforded me the ability to engage thousands of students just by being willing to step out and say, hey, Zach, I need help. Half the time, the project we were working on, I knew nothing about. Like, I remember I used to call and say, Zach, this coding thing is just not mine, right? And you would say, no, I got you. We'll do the code. We'll do the thing. We'll run through it several times. I remember we used to have meetings, virtual meetings, where we'd go through the thing. And after going through the thing, I'd spend time after the meeting ended just to refresh what we went through, right? So asking for help is not a bad thing.
No.
Asking for help is how you grow. Asking for help is how you build a network. If I wasn't willing to ask for help, half the network I have, I would not have them. So it's definitely one of the superpowers that I think I have, because I have no shame to my game in asking for help.
I like that.
All right. So how can companies and engineering leaders do a better job at supporting underrepresented talent and career changers?
I think getting linked up with great organizations, NSBE being one of them, STEMVise 360, any organization you can get out and get with that's going to do some work in the community is incredibly helpful. And you won't really know who needs help unless you're asking who needs help.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. And so I think that that's also very important. Go ahead.
So here's one of the things too. Like the companies, they're focused on their ROIs. Their job is to solve this problem in society. And oftentimes they're not necessarily focused on how do we build the next generation that's coming behind us. How do you think either schools or companies engage that? Because it took me to recognize the need of the school, but also recognize that I did not have the answer. And through that recognition, I knew I needed to go find outside someone who had the answer. And it's through the search that I found Zach and Workday. How do companies or schools systematize this sort of thing?
I think it's community. I think that any partnership that can be built there, and I think that we as people that are STEM professionals do have an obligation to be thinking about the next generation and to be trying to help foster growth in the next generation to continue to solve the problems that that are out there.
Okay.
And so I think that we can all be more proactive and be thinking about what is the impact that we can help drive forward in bringing up that next generation of engineers.
Okay. Fully agree with you. And I'll talk from the K through 12 side. Being in the K through 12 space, I believe, is the most pivotal point of our society.
Yep.
Because education creates every career that you'll find. A doctor recognizes in school that I like chemistry or physics or bio. An engineer, computer scientist recognizes in school or through some sort of schooling experience that I like coding. So I think it's so important that us as educators, us as professionals, recognize the importance of the part we play in developing the next generation. I think it's also equally important that we recognize that this is bigger than us. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than the work you're now doing. It's a recognition that the work I do play a part in engaging the next generation, so the world that's in front of us is better than the one that we currently have. And if as educators, as professionals, as companies, right, as engineers, if we are not thinking about that as professionals, then ultimately we are not going to be creating the type of solution that is necessary. Because the solution cannot just be for the problem that's in front of you. It has to be for the problem that has not yet been identified, right? So that's so important. What advice would you give to someone looking to pivot into the tech field from somewhere else?
I think if you can have a real crisp and clear why, and that why is motivational, then you'll be able to piece together whatever path you need to in order to be able to get there.
Okay.
And I think that, if I can do it, you can do it.
If I can do it, you can do it. Definitely.
Yes. I mean, there's certainly going to be challenges. There's going to be blockers. There's going to be things to overcome anytime you're making a career switch, but all of it is definitely possible. And, I'm coming at this from I've been incredibly, lucky to have very positive people and role models around me my entire life. And so I'm coming at it from that angle. But I think if you can be your own advocate and you have a strong why for why you want to make that change and can piece together the right communities and the right support in order to do that, then I guess my advice is go for it, because you're going to learn so much along the way. And like we chatted about before, that is going to be your strength. That nonlinear path is going to be your strength. And if you can work that into, the storytelling in your personal brand, that's incredibly powerful in my mind.
Okay. So you said something about story a while ago, and I know you're a poet. I want you to think about a piece that you have written. I want to ask you to say it just yet, but no, we're coming right back to it, right? Okay. Now, when you look back at your journey so far, and I know you're not too far up in age just yet, from mechanical engineering to software engineering leader, what are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of the opportunities that I've had to work with people. And I know that might be an interesting answer to that question from an engineering perspective, but it's all about the people. I feel most fulfilled when I'm getting to build relationships with people and work towards a common goal. I think that there's a lot of strengths there. I mean, as an example, I had the opportunity to work with 2 interns that we had a couple summers ago, and it was a wonderful opportunity to be able to work very closely with them and check in with them often and see, hey, how's it going? Is there anything I can do to be helping you? What problems are you facing? What challenges? And then those interns ended up accepting full-time offers and coming back to work, and now they're wonderful parts of our organization. And I got the opportunity to, promote somebody that was working at above their level. And I think it's those people wins that are particularly rewarding. And so I'm very, very happy about those. I think that there's also a lot of fun to be had and reward to be realized in technical problems as well. It's always fun when you've got something challenging and you're piecing together different teams and different things to come together to a common solution. And so I do find a lot of reward in those as well.
Okay. But it's the same thing in education. The most rewarding part of being in the education system and working with students is to see that aha moment after you've built the relationship and they have sort of switched their mindset where they're not seeing this no longer as being hard, but they know that, hey, Zach's here or Dr. Madourie is here to support me. And you see the aha when they start to actually believing in themselves.
Yeah.
Like the content's good, the project is good, but it's that aha where they start to truly believe in themselves that makes a difference, because at that point they've made the shift from, oh, I need this person to say, I'm capable. I can do this, right? And it comes through that relationship. That relationship piece is so important. And the most successful teachers we have are the teachers that take the time to build relationships with the students that they serve. So, if you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, or the self that's starting the School of Mines, what would it be?
Don't get discouraged when you fail that first test. Don't get discouraged. It's all part of the journey. And I just want to echo one thing you said before of like, it's all about somebody believing in you. There are people that are believing in you. And I just want to say, like, again, that's incredibly important. It was incredibly important that Coach Johnson believed in me and didn't let me drop his precalculus class. And like, that's just one obstacle to overcome along the way. And so the advice that I'd give to myself is that, things are going to be bumpy, but as long as you keep approaching the problems from the same way you approach that first one, with persistence and hard work, then you can accomplish anything.
I appreciate that. And it's so funny you talk about having those people and even you believing in yourself. Coming from Jamaica, right, to teach in the U.S., initially there was this fear of, am I capable of doing this thing right? Different environment. But based on some of the people I had in my life, I believed that no matter what the challenge was, I would be able to overcome with the right supports. And the supports for me, I needed to reach out to the necessary people. So that's when I say I have no fear of reaching out to people, it's not necessarily that I don't have fear. It is that the fear of not reaching out and not be and essentially assuring that I'm not going to be successful is harder to me. Like, you could say no, and the no to me doesn't necessarily mean no. It just means you're not the person. So I'm going to move on. Someone else is, right? Yeah. So that belief in yourself is so important. And I'd stress that for our teachers as well. You have to believe in your ability to go and engage this group of students, but also in your ability that you don't know everything, and be willing to engage the professionals, the administration, the companies, the external companies, because without them, your education is not relevant. If you keep education in the confines of the four walls, then you've taught these students in a vacuum, and they actually have not learned anything. They've gotten general knowledge, but without the application, learning really doesn't take place. And that's what I've seen in my experience working with you, even over the years. I'll give you an example. There's a particular student, I won't call the name, that was really fearful of when we were bringing the engineers in the room, because they saw the engineers as way above them. And I was like, nah, they're coming here to support us. And I would say to them, I don't know exactly what it might look like either, but they're going to come and support us. And based on the experiences that you were so a part of, that you created, that you are part of the execution, many of these students are now in college studying mechanical engineering. I had one particular student that graduated recently with his bachelor's in mechanical engineering, but is now working on autonomous ocean rovers.
That's cool.
And he talks about his experience of working with the Arduino, the Raspberry Pis. He talks about his experience of going over to the other schools and teaching the students the things that you taught when you were in the class. And all of those things came because, one, you believed that what you were offering would support the next generation. You believed because of the experiences you had, it was necessary for you to give back to the next generation. And I believed that being willing to ask for help and there's a level of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable there was the key to our success. And boy, were we successful. That was some of the most fun times that I've had operating in this space, when I had people like you to come in and to support. So, looking ahead, right? What is your vision for the future of engineering and education and educational accessibility, specifically when we talk about the STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math? What is your vision?
If I could wave a magic wand and have everybody in every single school have access to see some cool engineering stuff, and to not just have their first introduction be, oh, math is hard, science is hard, etc. That's absolutely what I'd want to do. Like, how can we bring kids into a fun project that makes sure that their first exposure to STEM is something that's fun and engaging and shows them what you actually do day to day, which is solve really, really fun problems. I think also I'm interested to see how we continue to learn and collaborate with AI and the tools that exist there, and how we can make sure that is a positive relationship that involves, always has a human in the loop. And I think that representation absolutely does matter. And so partnering with these organizations that are getting out into the community and actually doing really solid work, I would love to continue to double down on the work that we've done and try to build even more community around that. And I think that, companies should have an obligation to get out in the community and figure out what they need to do to be inspiring that next generation of students. And I think it doesn't even need to be as much as, the projects that we've kind of done in the classroom. It could be, invite a school to come take a tour of your operation. If you're doing some cool stuff with robots, if you've got cool stuff going on, how can you draw more in? How can you give students an opportunity to go home and say, yeah, today I saw some cool robots, or I got to interact with an engineer and do a fun project, or anything like that. So
awesome. So I'll definitely say, Zach, I think you're the model. When I say I think you're the model on the premise that you have always been willing to step out on the ledge and do the thing that you don't normally do in your day-to-day operations, right? The willingness to have those open and honest conversations with teachers like myself and with students, right? Being willing to take time to support, because at the end of the day, just those very conversations switch the mindset of the students. But it also assisted me as the teacher to know that I had the support necessary to do the thing required to move the students forward. So I think when I say you're the model, I say you're the model on the premise that, one, you have a level of vulnerability to engage in that partnership. You have a level of vulnerability to engage with students on their level, because many times professionals come in the space and they're at the top, and it's hard for students to talk to them. You were able to sit and have those conversations on the level of the student, but also be willing to bring them up to that level. And finally, I think you're the model just because of your willingness to give of yourself and your time. We met outside of work time. We were sitting in meetings at 5:30, 6 in the afternoon, going through things. This was your personal time. So when I say you are the model, I think you represented exactly what is needed from an industry standpoint to support the next generation of STEM leaders. And that's why, for me, it was a no-brainer to have you, or to ask you to sit and have this conversation, because you represented everything in response to the question, why STEM? So, based on that, a big part of this podcast is to have our guests to respond to the question, why STEM? Based on your experiences, your life, your thought, your vision, and your morals, right? So I want you to take 30 seconds, 45 seconds to really impress upon the next person and respond to the question, why STEM, based on Zach?
Sure. STEM has been an incredibly important part of my life. And it's because of, in STEM, there are so many different problems to solve, and these problems are incredibly impactful for the entire world. And so why STEM? Like, if you want to have an impact on the world, STEM is a wonderful vehicle to actually reason about and start having an impact. And it's not something that you go about alone. And I think that's where I find the most fun in STEM, is that there are teams of people and tons of community built up around STEM. And you'll have to piece together and work with all of these different fantastic people in order to make real impacts. And so it's impactful, it's challenging, and that challenge is fun. You get to constantly solve problems, and you get to work with some of the most incredible people that you'll ever meet. And so STEM is awesome. And if I could do my life over again, I would do the same exact thing.
Definitely, and I'll echo that. STEM creates the opportunity for you to engage, for you to connect, for you to support, for you to grow. And that's the premise of this podcast. Our idea is to engage the next generation of leaders through authentic experiences, through authentic advice, and through the people that have gone through the experiences and are willing to share them with you, with our listeners, so you can garner sort of that confidence as you seek to continue on your STEM journey, and by extension, the STEAM journey. So I'm sure, again, this was phenomenal. Thank you very much, Zach, for taking the time. I learned a lot. Now I understand the premise on which you operate, because it's ingrained in who you are and the experiences you've had. So definitely feel free to connect with us on all social media platforms. Zach's information is going to be here for you. Feel free to reach out to him. But again, this was a fantastic session. I learned a lot, and I look forward to continuing this engagement with professionals within the space to ensure that we are engaging and inspiring you as you continue on this path. Until next time, why STEM?